My friends, the time has finally arrived. Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles has been out long enough, and I have successfully completed at least one run of Tactician difficulty, which means we need to revisit that old tier list and talk about the generic jobs and where they rank with the new changes that have been made not only to them, but to the game's balance as a whole. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome to what I do, including our ongoing coverage of Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles, as well as the entire rest of the genre of turn-based strategy as well. Then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. And also, of course, huge shout out to all of the channel supporters, whether they be YouTube members or patrons. You guys are the backbone of the channel. Without having that direct support, month over month, year over year, it would be far harder to rely on YouTube as a major source of income for me, and as such, you deserve all the recognition in the world. You will see the names of all those fine folks scrolling by on the right-hand side of the screen at the end of the video, and if you would like to join them, you can find links to do so both on Patreon and through YouTube memberships in the description as well. Thank you to anyone who chooses to do so. So what are we doing today? Well, it's been a long time coming. I even had to put disclaimers on my other tier list videos since they were all done before the Ivalice Chronicles came out, but people have been clamoring for a generic job tier list as well as a monster tier list and a unique job tier list, which we will get to, for the Ivalice Chronicles. And of course, since I've only played Tactician mode, that is what we're going to be judging these jobs based on today. Tactician mode is a very different beast, even beyond changes that have been made to the game with the enhanced version of TIC, and it makes for a very interesting discussion. Generally speaking, if a job deals in status effects, debuffs, managing the field, being a more control style of gameplay, it's going to be better than it used to be. The damage dealers, meanwhile, are a little bit more of a mixed bag on how much they've changed. So we're going to talk about all of that here. I do have my previous tier list here as reference as well, so that I can just kind of say like, oh yeah, this is moving up or down, because my memory is a sieve and I don't remember without looking at it where I placed everything on that list. And you will note that just like last time, we do have the calculator tier as well. And we'll talk about that because while calculators have definitely been nerfed, especially on Tactician, their functionality is what makes them so nasty. So I suppose we can go right into that. We do have Dark Knight and Onion Knight on this tier list, but like obviously they're not in the game. Mods are currently being worked on to put them in the game, but that's not official. It's not even out yet. So we're going to disregard them. This is just the old version of the tier list that I used. And then we have calculator / arithmetician. That is going to get dropped right up here at the top. And if you've not seen the previous videos, basically what the calculator tier is a job that is so fundamentally broken, intentionally or otherwise, that it shatters all the balance of the game completely and puts it in a tier of its own compared to anything else that you can use in the game. More than Orlando, more than anything else, Calculator is in a class of its own, and previously Dark Knight and Onion Knight were there as well due to them being horribly balanced jobs. But Calculator stands on its own now because it lets you just completely avoid full mechanical systems of the game. Don't have to worry about the charge system, don't have to worry about MP, you can target anywhere, you have infinite range, so long as you can figure out the maths behind the equation that you're trying to do. It shatters everything over its name. And while, yes, the damage output of Calculator has been severely hit, you can't just one-shot everything with Holy, or at least not nearly as easily as you used to be able to, you're still able to do things that make all other mages completely inconsequential. Being able to haste your whole party, being able to slow the whole enemy party, being able to try and cast death on the whole enemy party, being able to hit every member of the enemy party for a good amount of damage, and also heal your allies if you've got it set up that they can absorb the element that you're using. There's so much strong capability with Calculator, again, Arithmetician now. It's still busted. It's still busted, and as such, it still sits in Calculator tier. Will there be anything else that joins it? I'll tell you right now, no. Moving on, though, we do have the rest of the jobs, and as a reminder, this is not judging the abilities of a job. This is judging the entire package. So I got so many comments on the first iteration of this tier list complaining about my placement of Squire, and don't you worry, Squire is going to go in the exact same place as it did last time, because, oh, Squire is such a powerful job. You get Stone Throw and Focus and JP Boost and Move +1, and it just makes all of your characters better. Yeah, great. Those are the abilities. That's a whole different discussion. The job as a whole, we need to talk about stats, growths, multipliers, what gear it can use, what abilities it's stuck with, what potentially intrinsic abilities it has, etc., etc. That's what we're judging here. Keep that in mind. I don't want to hear any complaints. And if you do complain, either you don't understand what the argument here is, or you skip this part of the video and just went to the end to see where all the jobs wound up, in which case, haha, joke's on you, sucker. So yes, Squire. Squire's a D tier job. Squire's a D tier job. Its stats are abysmal. I mean, growths are not super important anyway, something we'll talk about once I get to my whole job comprehensive overview video, which is currently in the works, but stat growths are terrible. Multipliers are terrible. Has fine gear, but like has the same gear options as half the jobs in the game, basically. And its abilities are fine. They're utility pieces, really. Like, yeah, having focus and throw stone to be able to grind up a bunch of JP fast, cool. Same thing for JP boost. Move +1 gives you more mobility. It's all good stuff. But you don't want to be staying in Squire. You want to get those abilities, and you want to get the hell out and never look back, unless you need to jack up your Squire level to unlock Mime or something. Like, and even then, it's all meta progression stuff. And that's going to be a phrase that comes up a couple of times during this tier list. So, yeah, Squire is god-awful. You don't want to be using Squire. You want to use Fundaments, sure. Again, different discussion. But as a job, Squire is the starter spot for a reason. Moving on to Chemist. And now more than ever, Chemist is phenomenal. Chemist is an S tier job. This is actually the exact same position that it was in previously, and I will tell you why. Unlike Squire, where, yes, like the items command and the other abilities that Chemist has make it really good, you're perfectly fine staying in Chemist for the entire game. Because of guns, and because of the intrinsic abilities that Chemist has, which it has now gotten another one with the Ivalice Chronicles, making it even better. So now, Chemist has the ability to wield guns naturally. It comes with items built in, which is great, because items is probably, at this point, I would say, one of the best, if not the best, healing support ability across the board. You have throw items inherently. You have Treasure Hunter inherently. And everything that Chemist is doing doesn't care about stats. It does not care about stats unless you're specifically using magic guns. You don't even need to do that. And even if you do that, there's ways to fix it with gear. So why is Chemist so great? Reliability. Reliability is the name of the game, and especially with the way that stats have been twisted around in the Ivalice Chronicles, especially on Tactician, where there's just a flat nerf to the amount of healing that you do and a flat buff to the damage that the enemy does, being able to reliably hit 30, 70, 150 healing with potions, or a full max heal guaranteed every time with elixirs. Beautiful. Beautiful. No worrying about charge time, no worrying about the Zodiac, no worrying about accuracy, MP, none of it. You can just heal. And that is so strong, especially now. Having the built-in auto potion, or not having the built-in auto potion, I should say, having the built-in throw items, apologies if I messed that up before, built-in throw items, built-in Treasure Hunter, it makes such a strong support unit. And then because all the physical damage guns, including the Stone Shooter, don't care at all what your stats are, you can have a reliable damage dealer and a reliable healer from the start of the game to the end of the game. And with the increased scaling that there always is with clothing and everything for gear, you'll always have solid HP on your Chemist. Like, yeah, you don't want them to be in melee, but that's why they have a gun. Like, they're not going to be in melee. So Chemist remains one of the undisputed kings of support, if not the biggest non-calculator support generic job in the game. I absolutely love it, and it is proven once again through Tactician mode that it has that level of quality, and I will hear nothing otherwise. Moving on to Knight. Knight I had previously in B tier, and I'm trying to decide if that's where it's staying or if it's getting bumped up to A tier, because now the ability to rend gear and the ability to rend stats is even more important than it used to be. Then having good HP, having good physical attack, nah, it's still B tier. It's still B tier. The thing about Knight is, even though, yes, being able to rend stats and being able to rend gear does make it a much better job for Tactician as a whole, because you need that ability to manipulate stats and kind of negate some of the threat that enemies have. There's other better ways to do that still through other jobs. And Knight is still limited by the fact that they're largely just using armor. They're just using swords. They're basic. They're very reliable. And I think that's why they do belong in B tier. I don't think they're C tier at all. You can always use a Knight and be happy with it. But the changes to the meta that's progressing with Tactician Knight doesn't lean into it heavy enough to get up to A tier, I guess would be kind of my reasoning. So very reasonable job. Tanky, can deal good damage. It's very enjoyable to use. So it's a solid base to build from. It's a fun job, but I don't think it goes any higher than B. Now, Archer. Archer is a very interesting one. This is one that I and everyone else knew was going to be reevaluated quite heavily with Tactician because of the changes that have been made to it. And whereas I had it in C tier before, it's by no means A tier, but I definitely think it gets bumped up to high B tier, for sure. The nice thing about Archer is aim has been improved so heavily. And while once we do our job tier list or our ability tier list video, redo that for Tactician, aim's probably going to go much higher than B tier because it actually has a lot of good capabilities now. Even just as the default ability for Archer that you must have, aim being so much more viable helps the job significantly. Are they still like the hottest thing on the block? No. Damage with bows can still be kind of weird, but the fact that you can reliably be throwing out aim plus 7s and getting a solid damage boost, especially if you like are at a point of the game where you can match up elements for enemy weaknesses or the like, or you just have really good speed and physical attacks, you're pumping out good damage, it makes for actually a pretty decent range damage dealer. Like, I don't think it's insane to consider taking an Archer to the end game. Are you going to want other specific support stuff on that Archer? Absolutely, but it's not unreasonable to do now due to aim being so horribly slow. So it's not the case anymore. Being able to pick away at dangerous enemies or squishy enemies that are in the back line, even once you get to Chapter 4 and enemy health absolutely skyrockets, it's still great. Being able to actually hit charging enemies to get big damage bonuses, not really being worried about something trying to move out of your range when you are aiming at it. There's just a lot of little tweaks that have been made to Archer that make it significantly more powerful. I'm very happy to see that because it's a fun job to use. Now, Black Mage. Black Mage was one of my S tier jobs before. Is it still? I don't think it is. Not for Tactician specifically. It's still A. It's very well possibly going to be the top of A. But the thing about Black Mage is that enemy health scaling is rough for it. It's still very strong through the first probably 75% of the game, I would say. But especially once you hit Chapter 4, enemies get tough, man. They get really, really tough. And you're not going to be able to as reliably detonate a whole enemy group with a Black Mage at that point. Will they still deal a lot of damage? Absolutely. They're in A tier here for a reason, but you're not just obliterating whole groups. And even with the reduced charge time that all of these different charge-based jobs have had, it is a lot easier to cast out big spells, but enemies are hitting so much harder. Your health is generally going to be pretty poor on Black Mage, especially if you're really trying to maximize your magic attack. And then you're not as reliably blowing things up. Like, it's not as good. You can't be like, all right, well, I'm going to cast Firaga on my main target here and blow him up and then maybe hit some of his friends around him for chip damage because, like, I had good Zodiac compatibility with that guy, so I had the damage I needed to kill him. Like, I had to go to Flare specifically in the end game multiple times with my Black Mage to reliably take out a priority target. And being able to do that is still incredibly strong. But there's some value lost there that really means you have to consider how viable your Black Mage is going to stay compared to an S tier job. Now, White Mage. This is also an interesting one. People got pretty heated with me for having White Mage in A tier last time. But see, what's interesting now is they are fast, which is nice. And charge time is so much faster. Even though on Tactician your healing output is lower, you can spam that healing more. So weirdly, I kind of think White Mage is better now than it was and still deserves to stay in A tier. It's going to be behind Black Mage for sure, but I was getting a lot of good use out of White Magic and my White Mages, man. More than I used to. Like, I used to just rely on chemists with throw items most of the time nowadays. But White Mage has a level of reliability now that I really enjoy as well, just for mass healing. Because obviously, a chemist, you're only doing single target healing. And with how hard the enemies can hit in Tactician, especially if they start throwing out like summons and things, like, you could need that big AoE heal, and you could need it quick. And being able to reliably go like, yeah, I'm going to cast a Curaga in 2 turns and heal up maybe 75% of the damage that was done to me. Start working in some good magic attack, Zodiac compatibility as well. Like, I don't know, man. There's something to be said for that. So this could be an opinion that changes for me over time as I continue to play more of Tactician, but look at those white mages right now. I feel pretty good about them. Better than I did before. And then especially with the fact that, like, you can actually seriously mitigate the amount of damage that enemies are doing with things like Protect and Shell. They do still have good gear options with robes and, like, you know, hats, and even being able to chip in damage with staves. Like, yeah, I like them. I think we're going to stick in A tier. Now, Thieves. Oh, man, this is another one that I got a lot of flack for. Thieves I had in C tier previously. I think they stay in C tier, honestly. Because, like, you think about it, right? A thief is... It's still just a meta progression job. People talk all the time, it's like, well, but you can neutralize enemy health and damage by stealing their gear. It's like, okay, cool. But when you're dealing with Tactician mode in particular, where you have to be able to reliably mitigate enemies with your actions... If my choice is, well, yeah, try to steal something, and maybe if I've got, like, really good compatibility and speed and all that, the different variables, I have, like, a 50% chance to steal a sword off a guy. Or I can try and hit him with some sort of a status effect, or just deal damage to it if it's a boss. I mean, most of the time, I think that's going to be the way to go. You know? Like, rolling the dice is already inherently, via the nature of it, a risk. When you're on Tactician, when you can just get blown up, and every little bit of damage counts, I don't think it's worth that risk. Especially then you talk about knives, and knives are just bad, and they're squishy. Like, they're fast, cool. They've got good evade, cool, but, like, yeah, I don't know. They're still just a C-tier job. Still just a C-tier job is what it is. What can I say? Now, Monk. This is going to be another interesting one. Monk I had an S tier before, and there was no complaints about that. However, now... I think just like Black Mage, I think they got to get bumped down to A. They'll be in front of White Mage, but Monk took some hits here, man. Ironically, because, you know, so the thing with Monk, it is still a very strong damage dealer. However, with the, again, damage mitigation that is applied to all of your units across the board when targeting the enemy, that hurts. The massively increased enemy HP, that also hurts. And then the relatively lower amount of healing that you get from things like Chakra, especially with the nerf to healing that you do across the board as well. I don't know, man. They're still very versatile. You're still happy to have a Monk, but they're nowhere near the god tier units that they were before. Now they actually feel like they're a little bit more of a, what's the phrase, like a jack of all trades and master of none, right? They can do a lot, and it's good that they can do a lot, because sometimes you do need that Swiss Army knife. A lot of times you're happy to have that Swiss Army knife. But their actual killiness has gone down quite a bit, and that hurts the job. Still an A-tier job, but just an A-tier job. Now, Time Mage. Oh, boy. Time Mage was in B tier for me before. I think that's going to be an A-tier job now, my guys. That's going to go over White Mage as well. So now, once again, the ability to mitigate enemies, even temporarily, is massively important in the Ivalice Chronicles. The fact that charge times have been so significantly reduced. Phenomenal in the Ivalice Chronicles. And that means those two things combined, Time Mage has a lot of capabilities going for it. You have staves, like White Mages, so you can still bop stuff and deal some damage that way if you need to. Meteor can actually be cast reliably, especially then if you slap a Swift spell on yourself. Phenomenal. Being able to haste all of your guys is still incredibly powerful. However, now you're likely to do things other than just haste your guys. That was one of my big criticisms of Time Mage before. It was like, haste is so reliably quick to cast. You can set up your team on most maps to hit 4, if not all 5 members to get everyone hasted right off the bat. And then pretty much the rest of the fight would just be your Time Mage reapplying haste to people as often as possible. Now, because you can cast other stuff more quickly, and it's nowhere near as easy to just annihilate enemies, being able to put slow, stop, immobilize on things can absolutely save your bacon. And it has certainly saved mine multiple times already over the course of my time with the game. So I do think they're significantly better than they are now, just from that need to be able to mitigate enemies. And the gear that they have is still solid, but their role is much stronger now. Could you still argue that it's just time magic that makes them so, like, valid? Sure, but I mean, being able to say I'm going to have time magic and black magic is great. Are they as strong as black mages? Because black mages tend to have higher magic attack and all that type of fun stuff. No, that's why they're not as high in A tier as black magic is. Maybe they'll get bumped down even further as we get further jobs. But they have a much wider level of capability. And you want that level of capability now more than ever. And I think that makes them really nice. Mystic. Mystic is another one. And I think for the exact same reasons that Time Mage is in A tier, Mystic is going to stay in A tier because it was in A tier before, but it was at the bottom of A. I think now it's actually going to be above Time Mage and White Mage for me. Because again, mitigation is huge. The damage that poles can bring to the table, very important. You need every bit of damage that you can get, and having your debuff character, your AoE like character control character, and then also have that unit be able to deal good melee damage, more valuable than ever. On top of the fact that being able to disable, sleep, put things to, or turn things to stone, apply faith to your allies, or apply disbelief to the enemy if they're going to be trying to cast a spell, or being able to silence things, or whatever, hugely valuable now. Mystic was one of the things I was the most excited for when we found out what some of the changes were going to be with the Ivalice Chronicles for Tactician mode, and they did not disappoint at all. I've always loved this job. I've always thought that it's a sleeper option that way too many people don't really understand the value of, and now especially with a version of the game that really wants you to explore those non-damage options as viable choices, Mystic is phenomenal. I absolutely love it. If you have not given Mystic a shot, you absolutely need to, now more than ever. It is so much fun to use that you'll really wind up enjoying yourself. Dragoon. Again, I got a lot of flack for this one too, putting Dragoon in B tier before. I think it's going to stay there. I think it's going to stay there. The issue with Dragoon, as it has always been, is it has one thing that it does that is not being a tanky frontliner with a shield and spear instead of a shield and sword like Knight. It jumps on stuff. It just does delayed damage. And you can tell me all you want, well, yeah, but doing that damage removes it from the board, so it can't be targeted, yada, 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 yada. Okay, great, cool, that's phenomenal. Doesn't matter if you can't kill the things that you're trying to target with it. You can have all the mitigation you want, but eventually you're not going to have any friends left unless you have an entire party of Dragoons, which case, like, yeah, okay, you could maybe make the argument, but, like, that is a party building thing, not a job viability thing. And the issue with Dragoon is if you don't have the right CT lined up, you're just not going to be able to land your jumps. And even then, in a mode like Tactician, where damage is no longer the sole singular thing, having a job that does literally that one thing, kind of a bummer. Now, with some UI changes, like having the combat timeline on the left side of the screen, and then actually being able to see that your jump is going to land only after you use it still, but still you can see if your jump is going to land before the enemy moves, so you can kind of plan like, okay, well, that's going to land, so I don't have to worry about that guy, or it's not going to land, so I have to mitigate him in some other way. Maybe I can cast, or hit him with leg shot from Mustadio or something, so he doesn't move, so that the Dragoon lands on him. Like, you can at least plan in that way, and that does help the Dragoon out, but it's still very limited. And it's limited to a damage roll in a mode where damage is not the end-all be-all. So I think it's probably going to sit at the bottom of B tier. I don't think it's a bad job in the way something like Thief kind of is, but it's definitely disappointing. And I'd definitely rather have a Knight rending things than I would rather have a Dragoon jumping on things, you know? You could do both, of course, but even then, so it's like, you're foregoing some other better options, so not my thing. I still get frustrated with Dragoon, even though it is a very cool job. Don't get me wrong. Geomancer. Geomancer was a low B tier job last time. I definitely think I'm revising that. We're going up to A tier. Because once again, chip damage at range, phenomenal, especially when enemies have as much health as they do. Being able to, from range, just get some free status effects applied, and more often than you might think, phenomenal. There's a reason that there's actually a fair number of enemies in the campaign that just have Geomancy as a backup option, because they can just hit you with it. It's like, okay, maybe now I lost 50 HP, but I'm also disabled. Or I'm sleeping. Or I'm stopped. Like, with more HP, there's more opportunities you're going to be able to apply those status effects. So, this may still be a personal bias thing. I really think that Geomancer is extremely underrated, and I do think that the changes that have been made for Tactician make it even more viable, even if it is a random chance thing. Like, it's not as reliable, obviously, as something like Mystic or Time Mage for applying direct status effects when you really need it, but the incidental application, the little bits of free extra value here and there that can keep swinging things in your favor, there is value in that. As a Magic player, or a former Magic player, because Universes Beyond, incremental value, even if you can't always count on it happening very regularly, still stacks up a lot over a game and can really swing things in your favor. The fact you can give them swords, you can give them shields, they can use clothes, so you can get a balance of physical attack and magical attack. Like, it's just a nice package overall, and kind of feels like the closest thing to a little bit of a red mage that the game has naturally. Obviously, you can build for it, but it's a fun job, and I think it does have a lot of nice value. Now, Mediator. Oh, the Mediator memes. Okay, listen. I had a whole video about this for a reason. There's such a dedicated fan base for Mediator. It's insane. Or Order, whichever you prefer. I will acquiesce. On Tactician, Mediator is now better than it used to be. I had Mediator top of C previously. Mediator is now going to be low B. Maybe above Dragoon, actually. Maybe even above Archer. Maybe above Archer, just because Mediator's still able to do the range damage roll. Even if you can't get the arcing shot that you can with bows, that's a little bit of a... that's a question. But having the ability to put things to sleep with Mediator is nice. I don't care about Entice. If we're not giving points to Thief for being able to incidentally remove some threat from an enemy by being able to steal stuff from them, I'm not giving it to Mediator for potentially being able to steal an enemy from the enemy team and make them an ally. Like, again, it's such a low chance when you're dealing with Tactician. Do you really want to be rolling those odds? I personally don't. If I'm worried about disabling enemies, I'd rather have like an AoE sleep. Again, from Mediator itself. Not Entice. Being able to reduce enemy brave to potentially turn something into a chicken can incidentally be handy, yes. You can get some fun things like that. And as a meta job, again, being able to boost your own brave and faith or reduce your faith if you're trying to make a really min-maxed build is really nice. But you want to do that with Speechcraft on another job. Preferably something like a Black Mage, because it'll have higher magic attack pretty much across the board all the time. And that'll make the success rate of your Speechcraft skill better, which is nice. But as a job, really the only thing the Mediator has going for it is that it can equip guns. Again, you have your built-in beast talk and things like that, so like for monster taming and poaching, it's good. But again, it's a meta progression thing. We talked about this previously. Meta progression doesn't matter if you can't win battles. You know? You have to win the fight for those Brave and Faith boosts to stick. You have to win the fight for the enemies that you've recruited with Entice, or the monsters that you've recruited with Entice, to stick. Mediator's not helping you with that as much. Giving it an elemental gun, once you get them, and really pumping its magic attack, because you want magic attack for Speechcraft anyways, we just discussed, can help with damage. But at that point, are you just using it as a gunslinger? Or are you trying to get closer and use your Speechcraft skills, in which case you're in danger of getting absolutely walloped? It's an issue. And I know it's an issue because I've had a lot of Mediators / orders that I've used in my campaign due to fan requests. They can work, but they are not my go-to choice. No way, no how. But I'll give them B because those status effects are more valuable than they used to be. Summoner. Now, this is an interesting one. I had Summoner in high A previously. I think that is still going to be the case, but now being in the same tier as Black Mage, are they better? I think the answer is yes. There are people that would argue that Summoner was always better than Black Mage. I didn't always agree with that, but now with the reduced cast times, with the AoE increase, being able to hit more enemies to deal more damage overall due to that AoE increase over black magic, meaning that you're actually kind of helping to mitigate in a weird way the reduction in damage from Tactician compared to the smaller AoE of Black Mage. I do think that makes a very solid role for Summoner. I got a lot of really good use out of Summoner by the end of the game, especially if you can then pop Swiftness and stuff on them. Like, they can toss out big spells like Odin in 2 turns pretty consistently, which is absolutely insane. The amount of damage output that winds up racking up to is disgusting. So yeah, I think as your non-calculator magical damage dealers, Summoner is really high up there now. And I really don't have to say that much else about them. Like, do you like big AoE elemental damage of all the different elements in the game pretty much? Summoner's your guy. And it's able to cast so much faster now. It's so nice. It's so nice. Yeah, Summoner top of A tier feels pretty reasonable to me. Ninja. Oh, see, Ninja was one of my other S tier ones before. Is it still? Does it join Chemist in that lofty role? I think it does. I think it does. Ninja is still an S tier job because it comes with dual wield innately. And dual wield giving you such a damage boost when your overall damage output has been hurt so heavily between that enemy health boost and the damage reduction on Tactician. Being able to just have 2 weapons and hit twice as hard, it's nice, man. Especially because then you can toss in stuff like aim and really ramp that damage up. It's good. It's real nice. As just raw physical damage dealers, ninjas feel amazing. And they always have, but now more than ever, it feels like that gap has grown. Being able to get dual wield and putting it on other jobs, sure, that is still absolutely a thing that you can do. But now, being able to put like attack boost on a ninja, have that speed, have that maneuverability, move range, making it easier than ever to get to dangerous charging mages in the backline, and potentially being one of the only things that can still one-shot them due to HP boosts. It's nice, man. It's real nice. So I think ninjas sit squarely in S tier. Throw is even worse than it used to be because the damage output is so but like, just as a little plink damage option, it's still good. And then, yeah, just the raw potential for that dual wield melee strike is really, really cool, especially with aim. So yeah, S tier seems good. Samurai. I had an A tier before, and I think Samurai is still going to sit in A tier. I think now above Geomancer, but below some of our other debuffers and offense options. Samurai is still great. Being able to guaranteed put Protect and Shell on your entire party to, again, help mitigate that damage, choice. Being able to get a really chunky amount of healing on your whole party, choice. Being able to deal a really solid amount of damage to a huge group of enemies and continuing to chunk them down in a much bigger area than most Black Mage spells is really nice. You're just looking at the fact that you're probably not going to be dealing as much actual damage with those abilities as like a Black Mage would. Black Mage with the Ido, that's still a spicy meat to ball, but that's not what we're talking about here. Samurai overall feels really, really nice. Having that reliable consistency for the support options that it has are phenomenal. And then being tanky, being able to deal melee damage, being able to deal magical damage. It's kind of like that same jack of all trades thing that Monk is now, but the delta of the damage difference between the 2 jobs, I feel like has been kind of tightened up a little bit due to the greater ability for AoE that Samurai has and how that helps to deal with the lower damage you have on Tactician now. So I think it's a really, really solid job. Having so much versatility is great. Solid A tier option for sure. Bard. Bard and Dancer are both very interesting. I had Bard in C tier before. I think Bard moves up very solidly to B tier now. Because battles are going longer, you can trigger more of the beneficial stat boosts that Bard brings to the table. I think it's going to go squarely over Mediator. It still takes a little while to get going. You still have to be able to protect the job, or the character in the job. But, even though, yeah, instruments are still kind of poop, just the ability to go sit in a corner and buff people's speed or attack or magic attack or what have you, a lot more reliable now when it takes like way longer to kill the enemy. There's still not a whole lot to say about it beyond that. I really wish the instruments were better, but I mean, if you're using a bard or a dancer properly, they're never attacking anyway, so like, eh. It basically just means that you could put your bard song on any job, but pretty much any other job has another role that it wants to be doing, so just leaving someone in bard and doing their thing seems totally fine. Along the same vein, and we're getting to the last two here, because again, we're ignoring Dark Knight and Onion Knight, I think Dancer is going to go right in the same spot, maybe 1 point higher. I do still like debuffing the enemy more than I like buffing myself, because there's other ways to buff in the ways that Bard does for the most part. Like, yeah, party-wide attack boost is pretty significant, but let's be honest, more often than not, you're using the speed boost song, and you can do that with things like Haste, Tailwind. There are other options. Whereas with Dancer, being able to hit the entire enemy party's speed, physical attack, magical attack, that's so nice. Doesn't matter how much HP the enemy has. If they can't do anything, if they can just be tanky and not take a turn or deal any damage, you've still effectively completely crippled them. And again, now that the fights go longer, you have more opportunities to do that than ever. With the better AI that Tactician seems to have, that could lead to them getting targeted, but I found 9 times out of 10, as long as you keep them as far away as possible and have other juicy targets in the way, the AI is still going to go after that. So as long as you're playing smart with your Dancer, they'll be able to do good stuff. In fact, you know, they go above Knight. Because Knights are just doing it to one target at a time. You can put something like Dual Wield on a Knight to make it so that they rend twice, which can really cripple one enemy. But by the time you're triggering that, there's a good chance that you've cast a couple of times with your Dancer anyway. So, I think there's play there, but Dancer's overall range and full enemy party targeting, I think gives it the edge there, for sure. Finally, Mime. And Mime is still such an interesting one. I had them in D tier last time. That was probably a little harsh. But I mean, Mime has very good stats, okay? Mime has very good stats, very good stat multipliers, got great growth rates if you're doing min-maxing, level up and down shenanigans, sure. But at the end of the day, it's not its own job. It's weird. It's like whatever your Mime is doing is reliant on what the rest of your party is doing. And most of the time, that just means that you're doing more damage with it. Maybe if you're doubling up on support options with a Mime, then it's got good play. Because again, we've talked about how damage is not the king that it was in the same way. But even then, it's like, okay, if you're doubling up on support, it's like, okay, what are you doubling up on? Casting Disable on things? Unless you're just really trying to hedge the bet, like, you're kind of just hoping and expecting that your status effect is going to apply. And if it doesn't apply, it's like, well, do I have another character to try to apply it again, when if it applied the first time, that's now just a wasted option? Like, I don't know. It's weird. I'll bump it up to C over Thief to make people happy, but I know how they work. I just don't like how they work, and I think there's more use to having a wider range of possibilities on your team instead of a dedicated party member that's just going to duplicate things that you're already doing. Sorry for the hard cut there. It turns out that Trixie jumped up on the countertop to try and get at the soup that I was making, so had to go deal with that. But yeah, Mime is a weird one. You could say it's an S tier job. I think it just is all over the spectrum. It doesn't really count. I don't like it. We're moving on. And we're moving on to the end of this video. Am I okay with how things are ranked here? I think so. I do feel pretty strongly about where everything is ranked here. And what I absolutely love to see, is the fact that things are more balanced now. We have drawn more jobs to the center of the tier list. And I love to see that, because everything in this game has a role, and it's always had a role. But there's always been clear superior options. And with the Ivalice Chronicles, and especially on Tactician mode, it feels like all of those options have been drawn together more to create a more cohesive spectrum of options for you, the player, to build your team the way that you want to build it. Are there still some things that are just better than others? Of course. You're not going to be able to look anyone in the eye who has any sincere opinion about this game and say that Archer is better than Ninja. That'll never happen. It will literally never happen. That person is a crazy person. If you exist, you're a crazy person. However, I don't think it's laughable to have an Archer on your team anymore. They have a different role. They're not going to be the powerhouse that a Ninja will be, but they will have a use. And I love that. That's really cool to see. Even though we didn't get a bunch of different abilities and things like that, just some of the tweaks to different jobs to make them more viable, the way that balance has been adjusted for the game as a whole, to bring down the overall dominating power of some of the big units from back in the day is really nice to see. It gives a lot more breathing room for our status effect units, for our buffers and debuffers. It feels so much better to play now. And I think this tier list shows that. Of course, do please let me know what you do think of this tier list. If you just jumped to the end of this video and are angrily typing out comments about why you don't like X, Y, or Z, and this is why Squire is so good, rah, 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 rah. Clearly you didn't watch the entire video, and you have no idea of the context for why I've made some of the choices that I have made, so more is the fool on you. But to all of you who do have just an honest, earnest, open discussion about where you would change things, how you would arrange your own list, what you would bump up or down in my list, or just my thought process in general. Thank you to all of you. I'm sure I'll be down in the comments discussing with some of y'all, and I love to see the conversations that you guys have with each other. There's always some good chatter on these videos, and I hope that this will wind up being another good example of that. For now, though, thank you once again to all of my direct channel supporters. You've been seeing them scroll by over my face on my right, and your right doesn't show properly on the camera because, you know, filming magic. But thank you to each and every one of you, whether you be a patron or a YouTube member. It absolutely means the world. Like I said, especially now, interest in tactics is dying down a little bit. Got to wait for the next big project to come out. Having you guys around to help out and keep things smoother is a blessing that I cannot overstate. So thank you so much. We'll be back very, very soon with a whole lot more content. I've got a whole bunch of stuff planned out. Like I said, the general class overview is in the works, should be done in a couple of days. So you can look forward to a much deeper dive on each individual job and what it can do in that. Very much looking forward to that. Always love doing those types of videos. And lots of other guides, discussion, etc. to go into, as well as new games. We'll have to see what's going to be on the docket for that. But for now, though, my name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Her name out there causing noise has been Trixie as well, though you probably didn't hear it because I probably cut it out. And we'll be back very soon. But until then, I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there, everybody. And remember, be good to each other, y'all. Bye now.